from the workers. JV, could you please come in and give us an update on the strike?
Good afternoon, comrades. My name is Joseph Velengosini Dube. That's the reason why I'm commonly known as JV. It's actually for my initials of my names. I'm the General Secretary of RTUSA in South Africa, the most militant union dealing with transport and other logistics, and also the harbors. From, I think, beginning of this year, there's been a lot of things developing in South Africa politically and also regarding workers in South Africa. Privatization, it's amongst other things that we are busy fighting, more especially within the state-owned enterprise companies, and Transnet is one of them, which is dealing with transport and logistics. Let me come on to the issue of wages and the strike that is going to commence on Monday. The unions in transport sector, more especially in Transnet, has been engaged in the very long-winded negotiations. What of surprise has been happening for the first time, Transnet says it doesn't have money. It was therefore offering at first 0%. It then moved on to 1.5%, which was the final offer. RTUSA is not part of the wage negotiations on the basis that we are not having enough threshold as required by the collective agreement between the two unions, which is Durban South African Transport Workers Union and United Workers Union, which are two unions sitting on the table. We've been just giving briefs from time to time by management in terms of what's happening and by our colleagues from Bundu and Sadao. On the 25th of August 2022, a certificate was issued by the Transnet Bargaining Council, which is a bargaining forum where negotiations are taking place. From then, there's been some sort of attempts to try and just settle the matter, but Transnet was very adamant to say, no, they don't have money. They are offering a final offer 1.5%. Then the certificate was issued, as I've indicated earlier on the 7th of October, which was last Friday. What has happened is that the union Ubuntu has given Transnet the notice to commence with the strike. Sadao has just given a notice to commence the strike on Monday, which is the 10th, the Monday of tomorrow. We have also gathered as RTUSA with our membership on Saturday, which was yesterday. Our membership has given us a mandate to join the strike. It means, therefore, in Transnet, in terms of the work, which is moving of the trains, moving of the goods, transporting actually goods and services, some of them being exported overseas, especially coal, where almost an hour, almost 200 loads of coal are loaded in the harbour of Richards Bay. The trains that are moving from Durban to inland to Gauteng, which is the fourth biggest province in terms of the GDP, which is generating almost on the GDP around the 35%. The harbour of Cape Town, the harbour of Moha, the harbour of Durban, which is the busiest in South Africa, all on Monday will come to standstill. The last biggest strike that we had in South Africa, more especially on the transport sector, was on 2010. So this is the biggest one, because things from Monday will be standstill. We are therefore waiting that Transnet will be coming on the table as early as Monday, because they cannot afford the strike. If maybe I can give the brief, the harbour of Durban alone, if it's standing for an hour, the loss is around 10 million an hour. The harbor of Research Bay, if it's standing for an hour, it's around 9 million an hour. So South Africa cannot afford to have this strike. We understand that Transnet have given the revised offer as of Friday after losing a bid in the labor court because they were trying to interdict the strike. So the offer, which they've said is a final offer, is around 3%, which was going to be paid as from January, or in fact in 3 installments, which was on January 2023, February 2023, and also March 2023. All the unions have just agreed that 3% on the basis of the circumstance of the economy in South Africa, the 3% is not enough. In fact, it is below the CPI, a consumer price index, which is currently at 4.5%. So if you give 3%, that's next to nothing on the basis of the high rise of inflation in South Africa, where economically we're not doing very well. We have seen from last year around 1.5 million, from the COVID, which was COVID-19 started in 2019 up to 2021. We have lost almost around 1.5 million workers in South Africa. So things as we stand right now are not so good in South Africa economically wise, and politically there's a lot of things that is happening. I think if you've been just following the news, the president of the country, which is also the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, was booed on May last year during May Day, and also onto the conference of COSATU, which was on the 27th to the 29th. A former General Secretary of NUM, a former Secretary General of ANC, who was coming from the union, was booed. In fact, he was stopped even to address the conference of COSATU. It was quite embarrassment. The president was booed and he did not address the May Day. The person who's coming from the union, who's got almost next to 25 years of experience, was currently the leader in ANC, and in terms of the portfolio, is leading the portfolio of energy. He was good, and in fact, he was refused to address the conference of COSATU. For the first time in history, the COSATU has not given a resolution to support the ANC onto the election. This is going to be a worst thing in South Africa if indeed COSATU, as they've pronounced, they are not going to support the ANC into the election. Mind you, the ANC will be having its conference on December this year. On 2024, the ANC will be national government elections, and currently ANC is around 50% or 51%. So if indeed COSATU does not, which is the largest federation in South Africa with plus minus 1.8 million workers, if indeed it does not support the ANC will be losing the election dismally. As we also know that in 2019, we have lost a lot of big metros, like Johannesburg, City of Tshwane, Cape Town, KwaZulu-Natal. We are just in KwaZulu-Natal, in Tegwini. We are leading actually the council or the metro through a coalition with other parties. So ANC currently is just standing on a very slippery position. Now, with COSATU pronouncing that it won't be, supporting the ANC, one is expecting the disaster in 2024. So things are not bad, are so bad in South Africa politically, and also there's been a lot of strikes. As now we're just having this strike of Transnet. There's been a lot of strikes. In fact, from July up until today in South Africa, it was like a strike season. Most companies have settled at around 7%, 7.5%. Then you can imagine, therefore, if Transnet, which got actually almost 1.5 trillion assets in South Africa, if it's going to have this special strike, it is going to be very disastrous. This is some short report that we are giving as RTUSA. On Monday, we'll be issuing a statement of which I think we'll be sending that statement to the media. And I think also David Hemson will also receive that statement where we'll be pronouncing our position in support of the strike and in terms of what is going to happen going forward. I thank you.
JV, that was a marvelous introduction. I know that there are some specific points which comrades internationally might not quite catch, and I'd like to just develop those more as explanation of your points and carrying forward the marvelous spirit that the workers are showing. You've just come from a meeting of dock workers yesterday. I could just imagine how inspiring that was. I just know our dockers are fed up to the back teeth with all the repression, the casualization, the cheap labor system, which is continuing in different ways, and the fact that stevedoring workers have been reduced to the most casual of casual workers in South Africa. When we started South African initiative from the early 1990s of a national dock labor scheme, and we fought and we fought and we fought again to do that, to eliminate all casual labor in the docks and in the transport industry. And we then had the ANC government saying, well, of course we'll do this, of course, but it never happened. In fact, now it's just a dream, and we have to fight again from the bottom up to be able to ensure that our workers have a decent salary, a firm job, commitment from employers, and all the benefits which workers can get through union organization. We've got the marvelous example of the ILWU, which even many years back had achieved something like $45 an hour in terms of its and negotiation. Our workers are lucky if we can even get 45 rand, and remember the rand is about a 20th of a dollar an hour. And this is what we're struggling for. We have dirt cheap conditions, total mismanagement, so that the railway system has been collapsing. Transnet, as you'll see from that link I've sent over, has been the main basis in which corruption, the distribution of state funds, all the funds which should be coming to the workers have actually gone to the Guptas, to secret connections with Indian businessmen, to people who are connected in dubious ways with the ANC, who are funding it and so forth. And then when all this is at a point of collapse, the workers are then blamed for asking that they can have a living wage. Unbelievable. And instead of that, they've been offered privatization. Now, privatization has argued that this is a form by which we can have rational system. At least profit is some way of judging whether a thing is working or not. But what we're seeing in privatization, first of all, we've never seen this in an efficient, rational privatization anywhere. And what we're seeing in South Africa is privatization to cronies to build an oligarch system in South Africa, which has already been started, and we don't want it seeing developed any further. In other words, all the pals of President Ramaphosa will be in the first in line, in the queue, I think is the way JV put it, to get the cash. And so they will be getting the plum jobs, the same apparatus, the same equipment, and now they'll be able to try and beat the workers back and back again to force new labor conditions, which will bring our workers into new semi-slave conditions, rushing to get a job every morning, as what we fought against in the 1960s and beyond. We were in that fight to get the workers away from being tossed around as cheap labor, desperate for a job, prepared to lose a finger, a hand, and maybe a leg in the process of producing and distributing cargo of all types. You should see our dock workers have done most exemplary work. People say, well, the workers are not working. Please, let's get this. Let me pass some images. I've seen dock workers moving 50 kg bags, as in the past on the sugar terminal, and moving those into containers. 50 kg. That's not even what no army would expect a trooper to be able to carry 50 kg. And our workers actually have moved this and done it. Please don't come with the idea that the workers are slacking off and there's anything like that going on our harbours. Our workers are hard workers. Our best trade unionists are those that really can manage the cranes, can manage the work, and they're proud of the work because they're not stock fee. They're not cattle.
Yes.
They are not the oxen that they've been called about in the past. They are workers who know how to work equipment and to run it as efficiently as possible if the equipment is there and if the system that they can run is there. We want workers' control. Workers know what the job is. They know that when the boxes, that the containers are standing 5 high, that's bad. That's bad news. Those containers should be moving. It's not that the workers don't know this. They know how it can be done. But the management is so grossly mismanaged. The software systems are terrible. The railway is not working as in the past. Everything is collapsing and the workers now have to pay for it. Imagine that. Mismanagement, and the workers have to then pick up all the responsibilities of making a system work when it's actually designed not to work, but just to make money for all those companies which are parasites on the workers and parasites in the state system, which is not guaranteeing workers' control. We want to see workers' control. Workers who are capable, who are able to know it, they know the job, they know how to work together. In South Africa, we have a huge separation between stevedoring workers and the state sector, which is actually managing the cranes. If we had workers' control, we'd sort that out. We'd have better communication systems. We'd know how to work like the ILWU workers in San Francisco and Oakland. They run the show themselves. I've been there with them. And you can see when they've been asked to remove something like 150 containers, they work it out themselves, how it's done. They know how to make it run smoothly. I've seen production there, productivity, which I almost scared to see because they're so efficient. Our guys could do the same. Not that we want to be slaves to productivity. We certainly don't want to be slaves to capital. But we do want to see our country, our people benefiting from trade and the movement of goods, and to manage the system of production and distribution through our own hands to be able to uplift our people. We've got 12.5 million people unemployed.
Yes.
Why should we tolerate this? Why should we then cut down on the workers who are employed and pass over and turn that 12.5 million into 20 million unemployed? We are refusing to do that. We will boo those ministers off the platforms and tell them to footsack. That's what you shout at a dog which comes to bite at your heels. Footsack, get away. And that's what you'll tell them. We do not need them, but we then have a huge challenge. And this is something I'd like to throw out to all the comrades. We've got the challenge of international solidarity. Where one is standing up, support that. Rise up, stand up. That's what the workers are doing in South Africa and internationally, but we do need that support. We want to know that we are not going to be knocked around. We're not going to see the army coming in, taking over. Not that they will think about that because they can't trust the army. I know the army would actually sympathize with the workers. Or the police coming in with Americana, with submachine guns and all the rest of it. I've seen that in the harbours. It's not going to happen. We are wanting to be able to bring the docks under our control, the railway system to improve it. Can you believe it? Let me just throw out something here. They bought, I think it cost something like 58 billion worth of trains. Those trains could not fit into tunnels in South Africa.
Of course, yes.
They were completely wrong. They wasted 58 billion on trains. Now they're trying to get the pennies back and say, well, it was cheating. Of course it was cheating. They cheated themselves through corrupt outsourcing. And they're outsourcing to our dock workers. And when our dock workers organize, they get gangsters in to come and kill our workers. I've got a record of our comrades who have fought in the past and fought in the present. And maybe it's not updated as it should be, but they are prepared to kill, to beat up and to kill our workers when they're coming out on strike or when they are organizing genuine trade unions like RTUSA is standing. I hope to see comrades, like Tetwa. Tetwa is one of the workers who worked with me. I'm back in touch with him again. I think you'll know him. I think he's still up at Richards Bay. Whenever there was a difficult job to be done, they'd say, where's Tetwa? We need this guy. We got to get the ship unloaded and moving. They call on Tetwa. When it came to work and to be able to get the workers to cooperate and to sort out a particular crisis on the docks, they would call on Eric Nkosi. He was previously a president of a union that we tried to set up and then was broken down through the most, I won't go into the horrors that we've been through. But Eric and Tetwa and all those marvelous workers, they are tops. They are brilliant workers. They can turn everything around. Why shouldn't those workers be in on the management of a system instead of being faced with destitution, outsourcing, and humiliation in a post-liberation country? We fought apartheid. We've won that. Now we are fighting against capitalism, and we're going to win that too. JB, all strengths. Amandla. We will do it.
Yeah, maybe to add into what Comrade David have just said, we were hoping, with the advent of democracy in 1994, more especially us as workers who've been on the trenches, who've been fighting apartheid, very, very, very hard, where a lot of workers died, where a lot of people in our country in South Africa died and so forth. With our black government, the expectation was so high and so huge, was most comrades who are in the parliament of the ANC, in the leading party, which is the ANC, the majority of them are coming from workers. And we're expecting that, what we were just looking at in terms of a two-stage theory, as we discussed within the Communist Party, that we are going to have, freedom and democracy. And then on the second stage, we're going to have socialism. ANC has been trying actually by all means, to stall that. We've been fighting as workers together with the Communist Party, to say, let the workers actually be at the forefront of the struggle because they understand actually these issues very, very well. What has happened in South Africa, as Dave have just indicated, is that capitalism has just taken over. South Africa, in fact, is controlled, by the capital. Ramaphosa is one of the billionaires in South Africa. This comrade is coming from the ranks of the workers. In fact, we're anticipating that he is a person that understands very well, the issue of working class, the issue of workers and the poor. But, it's very clear he's being controlled somewhere. That guy almost every day is taking away the little that workers are having, is taking away the little, that the country is having and is giving out to his friend and cronies who are the capital. And, it's very bad, because instead of workers improving their working condition, instead of the country, moving forward in terms of having a lot of workers working, the inequality is so huge, unemployment is so huge, everything just going backwards. And this is frustrating everybody. And I can tell you, as I was just indicating earlier on, that I don't see the ANC as the governing party in 2024 winning the election. But what is important, that we've been discussing with some of the workers, that as workers, we are just on our own. We have to unite. Currently, as we are having this strike within Transnet, we are talking that language. We have spoken to our comrades within SADAW, we have spoken to the comrades within UNTU to say, let us unite, let us be a one force so that we can just win this personal struggle. as I've indicated earlier on, most of the companies have settled at around 7%, 7.5%, even at 8%. So if you give workers 3%, that is an insult. That is a total insult to the workers. Coming to the point that Dave also have alluded onto the stevedores workers, dock workers. If you are having comrades in other countries who have just achieved $45. I'm not sure in terms of, in South Africa, workers who've been earning around 45 to 49 rands. You won't believe that right now, those wages have been reduced to 25 rand. In the last 20 years, workers has been earning around 45, 49 rands. Now, with Transnet, pressing with this issue of privatization, reducing the rates to these particular companies. In fact, those workers, the wage, more especially stevedoring, is for a worker to wake up in the morning, to have a lunchbox, go and work, and go back at home. End of the month, they've got nothing. This is a very sour and terrible things that workers are facing. Some of these workers, more especially in stevedoring, you'll find that because of the shortage of vessel, they are working in terms of rotation. A worker will be earning only 200 rand per month because you have only worked for 2 or 3 days. You can imagine the whole month a worker earning, 200 rand, 300 rand. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. Those workers are exposed to danger. Some of them, they will cut actually their fingers, they'll cut actually their feet and so forth. Some of them died. And even families are not looked after. So once you have died, you're just like a dog. Nobody just look after you and so forth. The situation, comrades, are so terrible. Dave, as he have indicated, at the time when in South Africa, they were fighting for these things. There were a little bit of improvement. Now things have just gone from bad to worse. From bad to worse. In fact, most of the workers, most stevedoring workers, they are not enjoying freedom and democracy. In fact, they are saying, at some point, even apartheid was better off because at least we're earning wages that can be in a position to feed and to support our families. With the new government, which is the black government and so forth, now we are unable even to feed and support our families. So you are a person who's waking up on daily basis, but per month or at the end of the month, we are like a person who's been just sitting home, not working or not earning anything. So we would like actually, workers internationally to support us, because things as it stands right now, it's so bad and it's so terrible. Working condition of workers, more especially in the harbor, stevedoring workers and so forth, it's so bad. On 2018, we engaged onto the strike. There was promises that they were going to be integrated with Transnet. Nothing has happened up to so far. All what we are happening right now is a privatization where new companies are going to come and take over the Pier 2, which is the very busiest department in terms of container terminal. They're also going to take Pier 2 is in Durban. The private company also in terms of the presentation or the privatization that they want to implement, they are going to take a port of Ngoha, which is in PE. Government invested around 5 billion in terms of building that thing. 5 billion. Now a private company is going to take over. They have just promised workers to say there will be no change of working condition. there will be no change of contract of employment and so forth. We know they're just lying. There's no investor that's going to come over and take all these workers, because government has been subsidizing actually this particular company. So we know when a new private company come and take over, first and foremost, as we know in terms of our experience and history, is going to reduce workers. Secondly, we know wages of workers are going to be reduced. These are the things that we are currently fighting. So we are busy right now. We have declared a dispute with Transnet. We are busy engaging with them. Because they're saying, guys, let us engage onto the table. We are working with these other two unions, which is Sadawa and Odo, in fighting this particular. At least we are together as workers in terms of those particular issues of privatization. And it's a huge issue in South Africa. I think if you follow the news in South Africa, you will know what has happened to SAA. SAA, which is South African Airways, has been taken over by the private company. Almost 99% were retrenched, 99%. These new companies that have just taken over SAA, they are steady but surely taking those workers back with half of the salaries that they used to earn. Half of what they used to earn. It's a kind of terrible things. Eskom, we are currently experiencing load shedding. There's a possibility that majority of workers in Eskom might be retrenched. In fact, the whole companies which are state-owned companies, they are in a disastrous mode right now. It's a disaster. Everything that we have fought for, everything that as trade unions we have worked up to the point of improving the working condition, all those things are reversed. Every single working condition that has been improved, gain over years, management together with government, they are reversing those gains. In fact, even workers in South Africa, they are starting to lose hope to the trade unions because they're saying, you are the trade union, you are sitting with the employers on the table, you are sitting with government as you are in a tripartite alliance, the ANC, the COSATU, and the SSCP. But government, which is led by the ANC, is taking, all the things that we have benefited. So hence the issue of alliance, it's just on a very slippery stage. In fact, there's a possibility that the alliance of the ANC, SSCP, and COSATU is going to break. In fact, there's a likelihood of this marriage breaking down, as I was alluding to the issue of COSATU booing the president last year on May Day, booing, the former general secretary of ANC, former general secretary of National Union Workers, Minister of Energy and Resources in South Africa. In fact, in most meetings where the ANC comrades are invited, they are getting cold hands. So there's a likelihood that the alliance is just going to break, as COSATU have just pronounced quite clearly that they are not going to support the ANC in the next general election in 2024. So these are the things. But, what is so much important is that workers, whatever they've gained over years, all those gains are taken away. It's a very painful thing to workers, more especially if over the periods of 20, 25 years, you have improved, more especially as us as trade, we have negotiating, we've been fighting, we've been marching and everything. Imagine all those things steady but surely, piece by piece are being taken away from workers. So it's a kind of hell. I would say workers are being subjected to hell in South Africa. It's a hell. I think maybe that is maybe a correct description, because it's painful. It's painful for all of us, painful to the workers. It's painful even to the society, Things are very, very, very bad. If maybe I can just paint actually that picture. Dave, he knew about these things. He's been actually on the picket line, which been fighting these particular things. So the smaller that we have has been taken away.
Bob, if you're ready with your report on Namibia.
That Comrade JB's report had that sort of physical presence. Anyway, I want to start with the statement last year by a very leading member of the Southwest African People's Organization, the ANC of Namibia. They were having a get-together to discuss why they were so bloody unpopular. And somebody raised that there ought to be a better move towards socialism. And the leading member of, I think he was Geingob, president, leading member of SWAPO said, no. We used to believe that nonsense, but the Chinese came and told us it's not right. You have to go for capitalism. And that's a really telling, it's a really telling statement. Now, the comrades we're in touch with in Namibia never had any illusions in SWAPO, I've got to say. They found them allied to tribal chiefs, had no roots in the working class, and was full of opportunists. And furthermore, they went round internationally telling lies about the people that were actually leading the independence movement. Good liberation fighters of different sorts, but they were told, it was spread around the world that SWAPO was the only real liberation movement, and it wasn't. Now, I want to take up three big issues of class struggle which have happened since the independence. First of all, like South Africa, Namibia is a mining country. It depends for a lot of its income on mining, and the Tsumeb Copper Corporation up in Tsumeb, in the north centre of Namibia, was a big mine and smelter of copper. And in the late 1990s, there was a very big strike at Tsumeb, and the Miners Union of Namibia is a big union. It's an important union, and I'll tell you about this strike. There was a security force in the mine, an armed security force. But the guys that were going on strike knew what they were, and they got to the armory where they kept their weapons before the security force could. And the security guards, as the strike broke out, ran across the veldt like hares, like gazelles. So you could get the temper of that movement. And they won a lot of victories. But they came up against international capital. Tsumeb was declared, it was a loss-making firm. They made it into a loss-making firm, actually, the people running it. And the workers were eventually all made redundant, retrenched. But they were promised certain things. And above all, they were promised that they would get their fair share of the pensions. And there's been a scandal ever since because mine workers, the Tsumeb mine workers, do not get their pension. They do not get it. And although they're now dying out, their younger generation, which relied on that pension because there's 40% unemployment in Namibia, is also taking up that fight. It's a big fight. But the relationship with the union is a funny one, because when the committee of retired miners went to the Mine Workers Union of Namibia office in Windhoek to try and sort things out, they were told that the National Secretary of the Union wasn't available, but they should come back on Saturday the next week. So they came back Saturday the next week and they said, "Where is he?" And the reception said, "Well, he's not here, and his message is you must never come back again." So, in fact, the whole funds of the miners' retirement fund was stolen, and it was stolen between trade union leaders, dodgy lawyers, and ministers. And stealing is the way of life of the SWAPO government. So that struggle goes on. I mean, it's a strike that took place over 20 years ago, but the results of that strike still carry on. There are still workers fighting in that country to get their pensions. The next big one I want to talk about, Namibia is a big fishery country. The Atlantic coast is very rich fishing ground. And at liberation, 1992, I think it was in Namibia, it was a bit earlier than South Africa, a constitution was adopted that recognised workers' rights, recognised health and safety at work and rights at work, recognised workers' rights to organise in trade unions. And this also was part of employment in this massive fishing industry. But due to collusion between the government and fishery companies, the fishery companies started withdrawing workers' rights. They started lengthening shifts at work. They started lengthening the periods at which people would go to sea. They took away a number of workers' rights at work. That led to a general strike, which lasted about 3 years of the fishery trade. Although the workers had to go back to work in the end, they had a very bad experience of the national unions in Namibia and the National Federation of Trade Unions. So they've set up a union which is now working to unite all fishermen, and they are very keen on international contacts. In fact, they've been to national conferences of NUMSA and made their case. So they're very keen on these international contacts, and they know that just around the other side of Africa, in Mozambique, there are also fishermen and fisheries workers. Now, what made this then hit the headlines was it was revealed that fishery companies, international fishery companies based, I think, in Iceland and in Japan, had bribed government ministers in Namibia to allow overfishing. So the companies that were taking away workers' rights were also breaking the law where it came to taking fish even off the spawning grounds at the times of year when fish are spawning and you have to leave them be to get the next lot of fish. But these companies were just steaming ahead. And there was the bribery was so rampant. At one point, a man was caught in a canoe paddling across a river from South Africa into Namibia with millions of rand in the canoe to hand over to a government minister. It's absolutely rampant, and it stinks. So that's then where the fishermen are at, and they're always, I think, eager to talk to. I think they mainly speak Afrikaans. It's not a group of English-speaking people, but they can be approached. The next group was the shop stewards at Rossing, the uranium mine, which has a long and very militant history on the coast there, where when it was a Rio Tinto-owned mine, the workers organised their union and they got international support. At one point, they were on strike and they wanted to boycott the movement of yellow cake, the uranium ore. And I know that the Liverpool dockers voted and imposed a ban on the movement of yellow cake from Russing. So out of those struggles in the 80s, they got very good conditions, and they had the right to organise a shop stewards committee, the right to facility time to organise the committee when workers could get time off the job and go and organise the union on the site, and also office facilities and a say in the employment arrangements. So they have very good conditions of work. Then the China National Nuclear Corporation bought the Rusing mine off Rio Tinto in the nearly 10 years ago, 8 to 9 years ago. And in their arrangements that they made, they swore by everything that is holy that workers would continue with the same conditions and would not lose the rights and conditions that they had. And then only after about a year after the takeover, then they started moving in on workers' conditions. They started populating the middle management with people that the company chose to make life really difficult. And then they started picking on people's rights, for example, their sickness benefits and so forth. So the shop stewards started protesting about that, started a campaign against that, and they all got fired. And they're currently going through the labour court in Namibia to get their rights back. So out of that experience, there is already a workers' advice centre in Windhoek, which has taken up the issues of the miners and in Tsumeb and the pensioners. And by the way, I missed out. In the corrupt liquidation of Tsumeb Copper Limited, many of the assets passed illegally into people's hands. So a businessman who gave a backhander to some of the former management of Tsumeb Copper got ownership of a compound, what had been the compound for contract labourers under apartheid. And this guy got the ownership of this place and he set it up as a hostel, quite an extensive site, lots of people living there. There is a real housing problem in Namibia. Most people like to live on their individual earth, their site, but people can't get them. So they went and lived in the hostel. And the conditions are very primitive and not very good from the health point of view. And there has been a rent strike there while they've insisted, first of all, to find out who actually owns this place, because they don't think it's the guy that's taking the rent off them. And secondly, to get some decent conditions. And quite recently, a special police force, which has no say in that area and no say in that condition, in that set of conditions, came and turfed them all out. And it was only because we managed to get a branch of Unite the Union here in Britain to write a very sharp letter to the president that we in fact got a stay on that. We managed to, because the legal system's full of people who think that what the European tells them is what has to happen. I'm sad to say we used it against them, and they pulled back on that one. So that's the just to round it up. The approach that comrades are taking in Namibia is that there is a constitution. That constitution gives workers rights, and it gives ordinary people rights. It was written probably somewhere a long, long way away by legal experts, and the government does not uphold the constitution. The legal system is a mess. I've spoken to lawyers there who got debarred because they stood up for workers in court. And, you get this sort of thing happening. But the comrades there take it very seriously that you have to fight for your legal rights, you have to fight for your rights as workers, and you have to fight for your trade unions to represent your rights and do their job properly. Just to quickly report on the uranium miners, they are facing the problem that workers face in Namibia. Their union is not giving them a full measure of support, and the government, there is a system similar to our system of employment tribunals. There's labour courts, and they're being held off each time they try to get their case into court and reclaim their rights, because their rights were broken by China National Nuclear Corporation. and they get held off and held off. Now, these are men who might be the only men in their extended family that have a job. They've kept a whole extended family going, and bit by bit, they're starting to try and find other ways of making a living. And even bizarrely, the China National Nuclear Corporation has put in a bid where normally workers would make a claim for loss of earnings under these circumstances. These workers were suddenly told, they got a solicitor's letter saying, please tell us how much you've been earning sweeping backyards or whatever they've been doing. You know, it's bizarre. Anyway, and it's been very disheartening for some of them. But out of it, they've established a workers' advice centre on the coast. There was already one in Windhoek, and there's a comrade who's maintaining that, and they're travelling round. There are many, many instances where workers need advice, they need support, they need somebody to stand up for them in court, and they're starting to do that. They're starting to learn how to do that. And we are definitely collecting money to help the comrades that are doing that work. And if I can get a document and give it to Roger, I've no doubt he can circulate it to, an appeal. He'll be able to circulate it to everybody in this call, I'm sure. I just want to make a further point. The treachery of the ANC and the treachery of SWAPO is a bizarre one, because behind all the rhetoric, and we heard lots of rhetoric in the 1960s and 70s, these were actually quite bourgeois formations. And their political understanding was really based on Stalinism. And if we see now the bizarre side of Irvin Jim, who appeared to be leading the fight against the ANC, he's now in the pocket of various business interests, from what I can tell. And he's starting to run the National Union of Metalworkers as if it was his personal fiefdom. And he's trying to run it as if he was Stalin and they were the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. And it's bizarre. It's just completely against all the traditions of that union, and it's led to an absolute blow-up. But I think it's worth emphasising the really evil influence at work here is Stalinism. And I've written something where I tried to explain why that sort of ghost of Stalinism is still about.